Another important tool needed to build your tables within your databases are keys and constraints, which help to further constrain the data value that can be stored in a particular column. Let's start with keys, which, though they are a type of constraint, they are a very important one. Keys come in two flavors, primary and foreign. Primary keys refer to the current table, while foreign refers to a different table. A primary key constraint will allow only one row to match. It's sort of an index into the data. The primary key can be one column or a combination of columns. If it's a one-column primary constraint, like the commonly used ID column, it can be auto-incremented. MySQL will keep track of the last inserted ID and insert any subsequent rows with the last inserted ID plus one value for the ID column. So we can do that here. We will add customer ID. It'll be an int, and we will auto increment. But how do we let it know that this is the primary key? So we will add it down here. We will add primary key, and then we add it within the parentheses. A foreign key constraint can also be a column or a combination of columns, but from a different table. We'll call it table B, which will then only allow the data in the current table, table A, to be inserted if it exists in table B. An example of a foreign key is an orders table where one column is the customer ID, representing the customer that is the owner of the order. But the customer ID is a foreign key to the customer table, meaning the customer ID must exist in the customer table if we want to add the order successfully to the orders table. It should be noted that the foreign key, like primary key of table A, will only allow one row to match, but that row is in table B. The first non-key constraint we'll talk about is not null. It is a column constraint, and when used, the value stored in that column cannot be null. You may want to use it for columns that store data like username, email, or address. By using it, you make the column data required. So for this one, it's auto-incremented, but we also want it to be not null, and we want first name and last name to be not null. The next is default, also a column constraint, though not really a constraint in the same sense as not null. But the specified default is the value that will be used if no value is given. It's often used in conjunction with not null. So say that if we wanted to have something not null and always make sure that we have a value, but we don't want people to have to put in a value if there isn't one present. So say for email, if we have it as not null, and then we have default no one at gmail.com. You can also do it for first name, default Jane, and last name, we'll do default Doe. Another is check, also a column constraint, and it ensures that all values in the column meet the specified range of values. For example, if you have a student table, you want to add new users to that table successfully only if the age is greater than 5. But here we don't have age, but we do have state, so we can do this. We can add a check where the state equals New York. And then in that case, the customer can only be added if their state equals New York. The last constraint is unique, which when used will mean the column will not accept duplicate values. A good place to use this is in your customer table on your email column. This way, if a row fails to be added due to a duplicated email, then you can let the customer know they already have an account under that email. So what we would do is we would remove this default because we want it to be unique. and add the keyword unique. Constraints are a great way of making sure the data in the database is limited or restricted, enforcing the rules you establish regarding the data you want to store.